Welcome to the Physical Product Movement, a podcast by Fiddle. We share stories of the world's most ambitious and exciting physical product brands to help you capitalize on the monumental change in how, why, and where consumers buy. I'm your host, Ken Ojuka. In this episode of the Physical Product Movement podcast, we speak with Tyler Merrick, founder of Project 7, a brand with a social mission to fund critical areas of need like hunger, clean drinking water, and shelter. He shares his experience about knocking it out of the park with a pet care business he started in his 20s. He then moved from that business to launch a more socially motivated brand, which he called Project 7. Tyler talks about his brand's near-death experience and how he was able to perform a brand autopsy to figure out how to revive it, which meant reducing the number of SKUs offered and focusing his company on a single product. He speaks about the lessons learned the hard way of relying too much on brick-and-mortar sales and how COVID reinforced those lessons and how he moved successfully into selling on Amazon and D2C. Tyler is a really humble guy with a great brand and fantastic advice for physical product entrepreneurs everywhere. Enjoy. All right. Hey, Tyler, how you doing? Thanks for joining me.
Hey, I'm good. Thank you, Ken, for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Hey, why don't you tell us where you're calling in from?
I am based out in Orange County, California.
Oh, nice. Nice. How's the weather these days? It's beautiful spring here in Utah. How's the weather down there?
You know, it's nice. It's we're kind of at the tail end of our it's kind of a joke to say our winter season, but so there's a little bit of we had a little bit of overcast skies and a little bit cooler today, but in general, it's been really nice.
Yeah, it's that beautiful California weather for sure.
Yeah, but you got some great mountain air and desert air out there. It's awesome. That's a great area.
Oh yeah, I'm looking out my window right now, and it's this is when I love Utah. It's warm, warmish outside, but it snowed in the mountains, and so you just see these beautiful white mountains, and everything is starting to turn green. It's my favorite time of year for sure.
Love it.
Yeah, well, why don't we kick this off? We usually like to hear a quote from you. Is there anything that you could share with the audience? A quote that's been impactful to you?
Yes. It's one that my father, shares with me, has shared with me many times over the years. And I'm sure that he got it from someone along the way. So I don't think he would take credit for it, but it's just the quote of, for myself or anyone that is pursuing, a business and it has application beyond business. It's as a parent, as a spouse, just in life. But I think if you're an entrepreneur, it has a really great meaning to you because it's to remember that the highs are never as high and the lows are never as low as you think. And just the perspective of, sometimes you can find yourself, things are going, really good in your business. And you kind of get that adrenaline hit and that excitement around a really great sales month or a new listing or something. And you can kind of start finding your identity and wanting more of that. But the reality is that that's only part of it. It's something not to find your identity in because we know that there's stuff that comes and then you fall back down again, but the lows are never as low as you think they are. So even in those moments where you're so discouraged, what we've all gone through in different ways with COVID, you can start to see some things starting to come back and things that made you maybe pivot and strengthen in your business and in your direction. And so not to find your identity in either one, but to stay grounded in the middle.
I like it. That's a great quote. Yeah. And any entrepreneur knows the ups and downs of the grind. And the lows are never quite as bad as you think, and the highs, you got to stay grounded. You got to find the middle ground and stay grounded to the things that really matter.
Yeah, because neither one. I mean, the highs are never sustainable,
Right.
and the lows, you will get through them. So it's just not finding your identity in either one.
I like it. I like it. So Tyler, why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself and your background? Where are you from?
Yeah, I am from the great state of Texas, and I am the son of an entrepreneur and the great grandson of an entrepreneur who's definitely been in kind of our DNA for many generations, and of just trying to make something, whether it's a product or a service, and make a living off of that. And so I grew up in in the panhandle of Texas, where not many people are from, but that's kind of most of the time when you say Texas, the reference is, oh, are you Dallas, Houston, Austin? I'm up where a little town outside of Amarillo called Hereford, which is the beef capital of the world per capita. So there's more cows there per capita than any other place in the world, if you can
Wow.
get your mind around that. So my house was out in the country, very unique upbringing. When I say son of an entrepreneur, that only frames a very small part of it. My family was in the pet food business.
Mm-hmm.
And so my home was on the homestead, if you will, where the factory was. And hundreds of employees came to work every day. And
Wow.
I could see them from my backyard. I could see them from the front. It was a very unique environment in that sense. And then on each side of the property and the factory were huge cattle feeding operations, so what we call feedlots. And there was, 50,000 cattle to the left in pens being commercially fed for the beef industry. And then there was 50,000 to the right and another, 70,000 behind you. So all in all, there was over 150,000 just in my little neck of the woods. So it was a very agribusiness focused community, farming, animal feed. Feeding animals and commercial livestock. So very humble. My dad started in very, very humble beginnings and just, one by one over the years, a little bit farther and farther. And before, kind of you blinked, there was everything from a dry dog food facility to a canned dog food facility to treats. And we made private label, which, most of your listeners will be somewhat familiar with that, but just, other people would come to us and ask us to contract to make their specific pet food or items. So we did that as well as make our own. So definitely not your average kind of lay of the land for a neighborhood that you would grow up in, but a lot of neat things as a result of that.
Yeah, that actually sounds pretty cool. You literally grew up in the middle of it. So did you always think that you would, run your own business as well?
I think so. I mean, I'm the oldest of four kids. And so when your dad's office is, a football throw away out of your front door, and you're used to going over there and playing, around in his office and just all over and being around him, I just really got immersed in it. And when you were about 10 or 11, for sure, my sister's by 12, but for the boys by that age, you had to start working there in the summers. And so you had to keep a summer job. And so when my friends were out, doing normal swimming pool and stuff like that, we were working with everything from being with a maintenance crew that might be doing, landscaping and painting fences and painting, houses, to being in a factory and sweeping the floors and, making sure that the warehouse, broken bags were cleaned up, even being on the line at times. And as you got a little bit older and filling up a bag of dog food or helping pack out a box of treats. And then as I, being the oldest, my dad started taking me to trade shows occasionally with him as we started to get into some of our own branded items. And so I just really fell in love with the idea of entrepreneurship. And so I ended up going to school and went away to Texas A&M.
Mm-hmm.
And then after I graduated, came back and worked for my dad for almost 7 years before I left to start my own venture. So yeah, definitely one of those things that I feel like I've always felt like I would do. Ran little businesses in college, was a terrible student, but would do little businesses on the side because that's what I was passionate about. So definitely something that I think from an early age was something I wanted to do.
Yeah, very nice. So talk about, life after the pet care business. You left your dad's business. What did you do after that?
Well, man, that definitely spoiled me because when I came back to work for my family, there was a little treat business that we had that sold to mom and pop pet stores. And I was going around, selling those treats to the different independent pet stores across the country. And I'd be at these little small trade shows and I'd see this kind of trend of natural pet food coming up. And so I went back to my parents and I said, I think this whole natural pet food thing is going to be a trend, and you guys you're in a very unique position that we own our own factories when a lot of other people are, having it manufactured elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be open if I came to you with an idea for a natural pet food line? Would you be open to letting me potentially, pursue something like that? And so they were very gracious and said, if you come to me with an idea, let's take a look at it. And so ended up, not too long after that, kind of one of those wake up in the middle of the night, had an idea, wrote it down, started working on it, came to them with it. And they were like, this is really cool. Let's give it a go. And, which is really unique. So I realized that that's where they really, backed me from an early stage of going, let's give it a try and let me take a chance. But I say it kind of ruined me because it's just one of the things as an entrepreneur. It was right place at right time. The whole thing just took off and natural pet food exploded and the brand exploded. And, as a mid 20-year-old, you can start to feel like you kind of know what you're doing when that starts happening. And so it was really growing at a pretty, record pace. And so I loved it. I loved that industry, but there was a part of me that also wanted to just pursue some other consumer product ideas outside of pet. And so I decided to transition out. And I thought that's, the playbook that had happened before with the pet food world, that if I just do that in the products that I was going to go into, that the same thing would happen when I started that, kind of like just sprinkle water over some seed in the ground and it'll explode. And I was definitely humbled quickly and regularly of just how difficult it is. And so it definitely just made me appreciate. I wasn't like when I say we were, it's like one of those things that right place, right time, but also realizing sometimes some opportunities. I tell people a lot of times, you were born on third, you didn't hit a triple.
Right.
So, and I don't mean that like it was not a silver spoon thing. I'm not a trust fund kid. Again, very humble, blue collar, upbringing and the type of work that my family did and humble beginnings. But there because of those humble beginnings and all of those things in place, I got to come in and the infrastructure was there, and all those things lined up, and it really took off. But you kind of forget that there was all that to begin there. That was your born on third,
right.
Scenario. So that definitely humbled me in a big way over the past several years of trying to scratch out, a living on my own as an entrepreneur and make something work. And just you appreciate so much more how hard it is when you put your hand to it yourself.
Right. Well, that's an awesome story. Let's switch gears a little bit to the company that you're running today. For those who haven't heard of your brand, what is Project 7 and what exactly do you do?
Well, when I left, it was because I was at this real fork in the road, professionally and spiritually, where I was trying to figure out, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? And I was, 29 when I left, but so I was still, very young to be saying, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? But I loved the pet food industry, like I said, but I had also kind of began to loathe some of my own doing. So what I mean by that is the growth and the success of the pet food brand was built around, this really premium, indulgent pet food for dogs and cats. So, making a California roll for a cat or, a buffalo stew for a dog, I started to be like, man, I mean, it's amazing. We're giving, quality products to these animals, but I really wrestled with, are there some of these dogs and cats are eating better than, someone in my own community that's down on their luck or in a tough position. And so I was like, can I do something else that could, instead of just make more products to help a Yorkie on the Upper West Side in Manhattan, have a shiny coat, could I use those gifts in another way that I felt like would have more purpose? And so I was either going to go work at a nonprofit or a church or just get away from it all. And I ran into a guy that was coming through the town that I lived at the time, and some people set us up for lunch, and he said, well, do you know what a social entrepreneur is? And I said, no, I don't. And when he told me about that, I was like, wow, that's what I want to do. I can put the two together and make products and then help out nonprofits at the same time and have kind of that mission plus work goal in life. And so that's how Project 7 was born. Was I wanted to start a brand of products that as people purchase them, it could be an ongoing revenue stream for 7 different areas of need, humanitarian areas of need. And the laughing, joke at myself is that it was too many causes. 7 is too many. But I was passionate and trying to, cover a range of things. And so they were when I say basic humanitarian needs like shelter and clean drinking water and hunger, the goal was to be non-polarizing issues, not red or blue state issues, but, purple in that regard. Right. And so we came out with any kind of product that a retailer would take, basically, to put on the shelf that would find a way to generate revenue for these different, charities. And so it was a very random mixin of products, not a very strategic one, way too opportunistic. So it started to have its challenges after about 5 years because they were too much like commodity type items. So
like what? Give me an example.
Well, like believe it or not, we got into the bottled water business, which no one would want to get in the bottled water business. But at the time I got into it because there was a brand called Ethos,
okay,
which is at Starbucks. And there were two guys that started Ethos, and it was a bottled water brand. As you bought it, it helped drill clean drinking water wells. And they had just been acquired by Starbucks as an internal control brand for Starbucks, and still to this day. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to piggyback. I had met the co-founders, and so I was like, I'm just going to use water as a fundraising vehicle. And so got into water, and we're doing things like a Caribou coffee shop, which is the second largest coffee chain, and they put the water in all their coffee shops, and then other places, airports, and blah blah blah. And then randomly got into chewing gum and mints, and then coffee and T-shirts. I mean, it was all over the place. And so it really had lost a purpose of a brand, except it was a fundraising vehicle. So what would happen was people would buy it at some of these retailers. We actually got it in, at Walmart and Target, 7-Eleven. But they would buy it, and then they would just kind of move on, kind of like, all right, I did my good for the day, or I'm going to go back to the brand and in the class that I feel like is really the best in class, in chewing gum or beverage. So we were seen as just a pity purchase, and not really a best in class type product. And so that's the first kind of answer to your question of what business are you running today and how did you get started? That was Project 7 in a nutshell. And then what happened is when it started to lose some of those, I was losing these large retail accounts. They were, hey, the product's just not moving. We're sorry. We think it's a great cause, but we're going to have to discontinue. You start doing some soul searching and what I call brand autopsy, and start going, how did we get here? What went wrong? And so I alluded to some of that in the sense that we weren't really known for something that was special or great, and we were known just more as a fundraising vehicle. And so I knew that if we were going to have a chance of surviving, we had to strip all that away and get back to the basics. So I picked the one product, which is a really strange thing, but I picked the one product that was actually still selling decent for us and where we had the most rapport with buyers and supply chain we knew, which was chewing gum, which is so random because nobody gets in the chewing gum business today. But I said, okay, we're going to focus. We're going to kill every product category that we've been in. We're just going to focus on chewing gum. And we're going to be the challenger brand and come out with all sorts of crazy flavors that have never been in gum before. So the gum category has been peppermint and spearmint. And if we want to have a shot of carving out a spot on the shelf, we're going to have to take a chance and do something like birthday cake and snow cone and cotton candy, and the list goes on and on. And so we still kept the Project 7 DNA, still moved the giving to the back of the package. So now the front of the package didn't say like feed the hungry, house the homeless, heal the sick, which was the brand prior to this. And now it moved to birthday cake and snow cone and cotton candy. And then the giving story was on the back of the package. And that really reset the business, and we got our footing again, and we became known for all of these really fun gum flavors that were alternative to your traditional gum, brands, what they were doing. And that takes us forward to the day of that led from chewing gum into some other candy, which we can talk more about. But that's how we got to here.
All right. So a lot to unpack there. I want to make sure to touch on the point of moving the mission to the back of the package, and even the way that you said it. I think a lot of brands struggle with that, a lot of social brands. What do you think that changed in the business and your perception to the customer when you did that?
Well, I think that, a lot of times, obviously I get people that want to implement this mission into their brand, and the heart is absolutely right. A lot of time, most of the time. I mean, I'm benefit of the doubt all the time. Mm-hmm. But you've got to figure out. You've got to get back to the brass tacks of consumption. At the end of the day, is really it is one of the most selfish actions we all, take every single day. It is about something that I want to consume right now for me. It's self-serving. So if you think about it, when you go, all right, where do I want to go to lunch today? If you're craving, tacos or whatever, and you drive by a pizza place, and the pizza place says, stop by here, and with your pizza order, we'll give 5 meals into your local community. Not many people are going to change their turn signal to pull into the pizza place, because why?
They're craving tacos.
They're craving tacos. And so the reality is that it's really hard to get people to change a behavior that isn't self-serving first. And so if you want to build mission into the product and some type of giving vehicle, you have to make it, the first thing is it has to be about a really killer product that is serving a need state for some customer demographic. And the cherry on top is for you first. If you want to make it about your customer second, can be, and by the way, we plant a tree, or, oh, by the way, we give a meal. But you've got to get them hooked on a product that is satisfying, whether they're a vegan, whether they're keto, whether they're, gluten-free, whatever it is. And that flavor profile, that product has to be really compelling and a really great product that will bring them back. Then that becomes repeat purchases in a sustainable business that can start to throw off some of the giving that you want. There's too much fatigue today around, hey, go ahead and buy one of our products and we're going to plant some trees. Most people just are like, there's a percentage of people that go, that's nice, I'll do it. But the majority of people are like, you know what? I just am going to buy the best product for me, the best price, the highest rated reviews. And if you end up doing that, that's great, but I'm not going to be guilted into doing that. You should be doing that as your own, as a corporate citizen. So I think that's the thing that I would tell entrepreneurs is, first and foremost, make a really great product. Not telling you to not deny what you want to do if you've got a mission that you're passionate about, but don't lose track of trying to make the mission more about the product than the product first. If you want a sustainable business, I learned that the hard way. You just have fatigue. It's kind of like the analogy I give a lot of times is, it's like if you run into a grocery store or a CVS or a Walgreens on a Friday, and you're checking out, and on the kiosk, on the prompt, you put your debit card in. It says, "Hey, would you like to donate $1 to Children's Miracle Network?" And so maybe you feel kind of guilty. Sure, I'll give $1. So you add $1 to your purchase, and then Sunday you have to run back in there for some Band-Aids, for whatever reason. Right. And you're checking out, and the dollar prompt comes up again. What do the majority of people do when they get to that prompt?
You skip right past it.
Because why?
I think it's some of that fatigue.
Well, I already did it.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's what happens is people kind of go, no, man, I already did it. Or I did it at another store across town. This is not what I was looking for here. Like if I was in a giving mode, I would go find a giving outlet to give it to. So this feels a little bit like a tax. It feels a little bit like a social pressure. And don't get me wrong, Kroger and CVS and those places happen to, raise a fair amount of money, kind of passing the plate like that. But when you put it into a brand structure, it doesn't have the sustaining power, if that makes sense long term, because it starts to have fatigue of, I just want a really great product. And if you do this, great, but I don't want to feel like I got to do this to unlock some kind of giving thing.
Yeah, understood. What are some brands that come to mind that are doing this well, do you think?
Well, it's changed. It's changed a lot. I think these things run in cycles, like fashion, like fluorescent colors are back from the 90s, and tie-dye.
Yeah, big pants are back in style apparently. Yeah.
Totally. So I think we're in a little bit of a valley right now of how many brands that it's a thing, quote unquote. It's happening in the background, but I think more of it is resonating with brands like Penn, and this is Tyler's humble opinion, Ben and Jerry's and Patagonia, where it's not necessarily buy this to make this giving thing happen, but they're brands that are using their brand as a platform to speak about social justice issues, the environment, trying to pursue legislation to protect certain public lands. They're 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 fitting a certain tribe of people that support that brand because not necessarily, it planted three trees, but they know that this is the kind of brand I want to buy and support. This is what I'm about, and so I want to support them. You back up 6-7 years ago, and you had the peak of like a Tom's shoes, where it was very big. Like, oh, cool! I've never been able to give a pair of shoes to someone. Well, yeah, we could. I would go out and we have plenty in our closets. We can go and give them out. But Tom's made this really simple model that was just going to take care of it for you, and it was this outsourced giving thing. So I was like, felt really cool. I bought this pair of cool shoes, and somebody somewhere got a pair of shoes because of me. I'm a good person. That was the peak of it, I think, 5 or 6 years ago. And there's been other ones that have been, social brands that have tried to make that happen. In the food space, there hasn't been a ton. Like, there's little ones here and there. Kaizu does a little bar that does meals back. Soulful Project makes an oatmeal that does meals back. You'll see like Back to Roots. It's a gardening company, helping out gardening in schools. But none of them, they're very small niche brands. They haven't reached a really big scale. Divine Chocolate has a slave-free chocolate. Tony's Chocolonely is slave-free chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
But people are buying those first and foremost because it's a really great product, especially on the chocolate ones where it's taste profile preference. So I would say that I think we've moved from a transactional giving kind of storm of brands that we had doing stuff like that to activism brands that are, like I said, Ben and Jerry's and Patagonia, that are out there using their platforms to lobby certain issues and speak up on things. That's kind of the thing I think people are more into right now, what they want to support more than a transactional giving brand.
Yeah, interesting. The other thing that you talked about is how you looked at Project 7. You did a brand autopsy, and I wanted you to describe that a little bit for those who may have a product that just isn't moving, or they've been at it for a little while. What goes into a brand autopsy? What are you looking for, and how do you know when it's time to maybe pivot a little bit?
Man, it's hard, and sometimes you're so close to it that you don't want to accept that there's that the product has died, the brand has died, that there's, or it's in a really bad state. So, but you've got enough for those founders out there, entrepreneurs hearing this, that you're not denying it. When you're laying your head down on your pillow at night, you're waking up, you're getting an email on a rejection of a current, product, or sales on Shopify, we're down again. That there's something not right. But if you can't get there on your own, don't be afraid to reach out to, an impartial spectator, whether it's a mentor or someone in your space, and say, hey, I need some help here, because obviously what I'm doing is not working, and I need to be honest with it. And so for me, that autopsy looked at it from a number of different ways. And there was it was a combination of kind of getting there, certain things on my own, but then other people helping me out. And when I say other people helping me out, that sounds a little bit shiny. That can also mean rejection. You know,
it can be painful. Is what you're saying.
It can be very painful.
Yeah.
You know, when you're being deleted from a planogram, you know, nationally at Target, that's you gotta like, why? What happened here? And sometimes the buyer will give you feedback, and sometimes the feedback is good, and sometimes the feedback's not good. And so what I mean by that is if you've got a buyer that's, you know, worth their salt and really cares and wants to give you some constructive feedback, then that's good. But if you've got one that's just, you know, distant and just says, yeah, it just wasn't a good product, you know, take that with a grain of salt and keep digging. Just like in an autopsy, an investigator would keep pushing for more facts and go deeper and start to ask other questions. And you can try again with that buyer to get some feedback. You can try their channels. But so for me, when we did our autopsy, it was, you know, how did we get here? And so you kind of unpack that. Why didn't it work? What should we have done? What would we do different if we were going forward? You know, and those were, you can kind of keep naming some other bullet points, but I think those three really help you start to unpack a little bit of what's not right with the brand. And so what's really important, Ken, is that at the end of that autopsy, you really have to try your best to say, I don't have to save this product, or I don't have to save this business. And that's going to sound counterintuitive to most people. The best thing you can do, though, in that scenario, if you really are dealing with a brand death or a product death, is you have to have enough discipline to step away from it and say, it may be over with. And the ideas that I have to save it may not be the ones that would work for it. And so I'm also at the same time going to give myself permission to explore what life would look like if that happened. Would I go get another job somewhere else? What's the other product that I would launch and why? How would I fix it? And give a little bit of room to breathe there. That was the best thing that I can tell you that saved my business back in the day, was when I took off the pressure that I had to save this, even with the savings in it. And I told myself, like, no, I have to fix it. I have to pull it up. I have to make it happen. When my wife and I talked, and it was like, no, we've put a lot into this. So it might not be the best idea to put more into something that's already a bad thing, that's broken, that's got a problem. We need to have permission here to be honest, and maybe we don't save this business. Maybe we have the funeral and we move on. And so I started interviewing for other sales positions and exploring what life would look like if I did not try and turn the business around. And that took a lot of pressure off. But at the same time, it gave a little bit of space for me to dream in between those conversations with some of those people I was looking at other jobs. And that it was out of that, not as much pressure to save it, not as much pressure that I have to make this work, that the idea came for the crazy gum flavors and this unique gum package that had never been done before in gum, which was a soft pouch that fit in your pocket and had a resealable zipper. And so when I brought that to one more trade show, my wife and I both were like, all right, here's the deal. We're bringing it to this trade show. Sends me off on the plane, and we both say, this is it. Either this trade show, the market responds to this, reinvention of the brand and this focus on gum. And if they don't, we're not going to try and make this happen. We're going to pursue some of these other professional employment, opportunities. And went to that show in New Orleans and had just an incredible response, and retailers that had bought the brand in the past saying, "Yep, this is what it needed. We'll get behind it. We'll put it in." And so we ended up, relaunching it. But that's an encouraging thing that I would tell people if they can is try to create that space so that they're not so too close up to it that they can't see objectively.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, everybody listening to this is going to think, well, easier said than done, right? Like this is a very tough thing to do. But I think it kind of goes back to your quote that you started off with. It's just remember those highs and lows, aren't quite as dramatic as they might feel at those different times. And you have to create that space, like you're saying, in order to be able to see things clearly and see a path forward.
Yep.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about that. So you went to this trade show and you had a lot of interest. Was it enough interest that it was all of a sudden, you knew for sure you had to move forward with this? Or, some of the things that I think are really tough, for a business, facing these types of problems is sometimes you still have a little bit of interest, but it's not like overwhelming. It's not a clear yes, but it's maybe a nudge in the right direction. And so you kind of have to see that. How was it for you guys? Was it like a slam dunk? It was like, okay, this is obvious. This is the way forward. Or how did you approach it?
Going into that trade show, I wasn't completely blind. I had tested it out, with some trusted advisors and a couple of buyer friends and brokers. So I knew there was a little bit of smoke around, the retooling of the brand. So that going into that show, I felt like we had something unique. So I would encourage in the autopsy, as you start to rebuild of what you think is going to be your step out of that, to then test that theory out with, some different customers, industry personnel, to see if there's legs to what you're doing so that you can feel good about potentially going down that new path. So I think that's an important part in all of this. And then I would say that if you don't, if you're getting pushback on those things and you're still not there, it can be aggravating, but just go back and get back in, to the work table and put it up on there and start working and taking that feedback and come back again to that group and see if you're getting closer. And that you can't I would just say in this particular scenario, you can't just go with an entrepreneur's gut, because an entrepreneur's gut, maybe starting something that can work well. And because there's never really a science to it, an entrepreneur is crazy enough to go, I'm going to make this work. But when you're dealing with a failed business and you're dealing with, a failed product, you do need to get some more stakeholders to help you see, is there some teeth behind what I'm trying to do again here? So if you're getting pushback, don't just bear down even more and be like, no, they have it wrong, I'm going forward with it. That maybe that works 1 out of 100 times, but that's a dangerous path to take. So I would, does that make sense?
Yeah. No, and I think it's great advice.
But I think for an entrepreneur, the thing is, look, sometimes a person that's an entrepreneur starts a business, creates a product, and they're still using that same one today, 10 years later, and it's built on it and it's grown. But there's a lot of entrepreneurs that started with one, it had to pivot into something else, and then the market changed again and they had to pivot again. Like I have friends that were in the soap business that during COVID moved all their business into sanitizers. And now sanitizers, there's billions of overstock. So they're trying to give it away, and they've moved back to soap. But there were some of them that were like, we want to be in sanitizers long term. There's a really good business here. It wouldn't have happened without that kind of challenge. For me, my next pivot was we were making chewing gum, and we had all these customers that were like, hey, you make these crazy fun gum flavors. What if you made them into candy, like a really fun organic gummy bear and licorice and lollipops? So we started to do that, but a couple of years into it, we started being like, man, organic, it's expensive. It's a small market. It's still the same amount of sugar. It's still the same amount of carbs. Is this long-term enough of a market to build a business out of? And is this something that is going to be beyond an impulse purchase, where a lot of times candy is? Like, I feel like this craving right now, so I buy what's in the store, the convenience store. We're going to be in a really tough spot because we're 3 times the price of conventional. So our odds go down considerably in an impulse purchase. We need to build something that's more e-com ready, that's more need state to feed a certain lifestyle. And so we started reinventing our candy to be low sugar, keto-friendly, plant-based, because we knew that we needed to create a product that wasn't so dependent on brick and mortar, where a buyer gets thousands of products presented before them and goes, I only have so much space, guys. I'm sorry, I can't put you in. Now we live in a day and age where you can put that item on Amazon or your site and go connect directly to customers that are looking for that type of product. So that made me pivot again, and try to survive as an entrepreneur. And now that's our bread and butter, and that's where the majority of the business is at and has grown a ton. If I hadn't have done that, here's a terrible thing that would have happened. Before this year, chewing gum was 50% of my business. Well, during COVID, guess what took a 35 to 40% dive as a category?
That's interesting. How come?
Well, people quit chewing gum, wearing masks, social distancing. It wasn't, I'm not dealing with people as often. I just ate lunch. I'm running this meeting. I need to freshen my breath. I'm on this flight. I just got out for the flight. I want to freshen my breath, whatever. As a category, if you look at the gum business, sugar-free gum being 4 billion or so and change in the U.S., and you look at it being down 30 to 40% as a category, that's $1.5 billion in a year gone.
Wow.
Just from people changing a behavior. So that sometimes you're just going to have situations as entrepreneurs that you have to respond to the market and figure out a way to survive, and pivot. And that's what we did. And it's not easy, but I think every entrepreneur needs to be thinking about that. The market moves so different today that you've got to be agile enough to respond to it.
Right. And so what was the impact of COVID on the rest of your business?
Oh, I don't want to sound like a sad story, but I mean, it was awful. It was the worst business year I've been in business. It was 3 things that hit us. We were down 45% as a company, and still had all the same headcount, costs, you name it. We got hit in 3 ways. The first one I just told you about, just chewing gum. The second one was our business was too reliant on what is called, the front end checkout area of a store.
Right.
And that's the last purchase point, for people. We sold a lot of gummy bears and items up there that during COVID, people just quit shopping. They were either just doing panic buying and buying their stuff in the grocery store and lining up 6 feet, going through the conveyor belt and trying to get out. They weren't lingering there and going, let me grab a couple other things here and toss them on the belt. So that whole front end was down.
Or they're shopping online, right? They're not even in the store.
That's exactly right. Instacart, Amazon, that was the other one. And then for the one, this is a crazy thing that people don't think about. For the ones that were in store, for the retailers, they were really struggling to stay in stock of, toilet paper, milk, bread and eggs, the house staples. And so they made a predetermined choice that they were going to sacrifice in-stock levels on the front end to allocate those people resources to make sure that those bigger items stayed in stock. So even if you did have people shopping in the front, they were very the inventory was very low to even non-existent because people quit restocking those shelves. Are you tracking with me?
Yeah.
And then the third bucket was I had a very good business in what is considered alternative retail. So what that means is AMC movie theaters was a great customer, nice sized customer that I had worked for 3 years to get our candy in. And the first year we're in it, COVID happened.
COVID happens, yeah.
And they shut down. And then REI, Michael's, World Market, all these places that were deemed non-essential retail. And as a result, I had all of this inventory that I was sitting on that I didn't have a home to go to. And so I had to write off tons of product, sell it for 10 cents on the dollar if I was lucky. So it was a very difficult year. I still know people had it worse than we did. Obviously, the restaurants and a lot of those non-essential retail, and there's a lot of challenging ones. But it was definitely, it hit us in a big way, 40-45%.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I was in a Sprout Market the other day and saw your product in there. And then I'm trying to think where else I saw it.
Yeah. Your guy is a great customer.
What about Walmart? Are you guys in Walmart?
We have some gum in Walmart in the back of the store. We have our candy at Target at the front end. You may have seen it at REI.
No, I think it was probably Target then. I'm just trying to think of where I was. Okay, so you've got really good distribution. I've seen you in a lot of places. Looking at the store locator on your website, you guys are kind of all over the place. What about the future? What about getting out of COVID here and moving forward? What are some of the things that you're excited about? What are the plans? What's going on?
I'm really excited about the brand pivot. We phased out all of our full sugar organic candy and moved everything into low sugar and keto-friendly candy. Mm-hmm. And I'm excited about that because I think that it's not a diet trend. Cutting sugar out of diets is something that's going to be around for a long time. And I think the excitement around making really great candy, which we spent 2.5 years in innovation to come up with ours.
And it really is great. It is great.
Thank you.
I have to say that, and I'm not just saying that because we're talking right now. My wife loves it. I have a 12-year-old boy who loves your gum. I just think you guys have really great product.
I really appreciate that. I mean it, and that it's a labor of love, and not always do you land with every customer, but I think that's when I get most excited about. And then finally, instead of trying to be so many things to different people, and that's another mistake I made as an entrepreneur and a brand owner. Mm-hmm. When people would say, well, who's your product for? And, who's your target customer? And I'd be like, well, everyone, so now having a more focused effort, the neat thing is that we live in a day and age where you can take that, directly online, and you can build up that customer base, and you can sell directly to them and scale. And it's not that I'm against brick and mortar, but it is going to continue to be challenging for challenger brands at brick and mortar because you have two locomotives that you're going up against. One is major brands with crazy ad dollars. So, what they spend with those retailers buys them a lot of shelf space and loyalty on the planogram. And they're going to be able to promote and have really great velocities. And the other locomotive is the rush by retailers to build up their private label, their own brands.
Mm-hmm.
And so who gets pinched in there is, the challenger new brands. And so you've got to figure out a way to have another way to get your product, to customers. And I think we did not have a very serious online business for so many years because we were an impulse type product. Just really was too dependent on hopefully getting in that strike zone at the end of the purchase shopping time at the store, that at the end of that cycle at the checkout, you would see our unicorn gum or champagne gummies or something and be like, oh, that's fun. I want to toss that in here. Now we're going, no, let's create a product that people want to buy in bulk and keep in their pantry and keep in their backpack, because it seats us, it takes care of it meets a certain lifestyle need state. And so building up D2C and our low sugar innovation is what I'm most excited about.
Well, yeah, me too, because I've been low carb for a long time. I've been keto for almost 4 years, and one of the struggles is finding, a good treat that isn't going to send your blood sugar spiking, and
Yeah.
So me and my wife love your product.
Thank you.
Tyler, we've been talking for almost an hour. Just wanted to move on to the quick fire round, and then we'll wrap this up. Just tell me the first thing that comes to your mind as I ask you these next 4 questions. Name one tool or a resource that's helped you in your career.
I would say Evernote. Evernote is an app that is on both platforms, but I use that every single day for a number of things, from project management to journaling to ideas, self-care, thought cycles. It's helped me out personally for my family, things with my children. I've got tons and tons of journals and notes, and it goes with me wherever I go. So that has been a fantastic one.
Yeah, awesome. Love Evernote. What's a book that's been really helpful to you?
I absolutely devoured Shoe Dog.
That was awesome. That was a great book. Yeah.
I think, especially if you're an entrepreneur, you're just like, to hear someone tell some of the crazy stories, and, just the setbacks and, the different, all sorts of left turns and right turns. I love that one. Not because like everyone's going to turn into a Nike, but just that Nike didn't just show up one day as this behemoth,
Mm-hmm.
And they went through a lot of amazing, startup challenges. And so just hearing stories like that. I also loved Outliers.
Yeah. Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah. I think I love to learn by story. And so hearing those different stories and scenarios and observations, the data behind it, I eat that kind of stuff up.
What is one piece of advice that you'd give your 21-year-old self?
You're not such hot crap. No, I would do kind of like what King Solomon said in Ecclesiastes, where he, still to this day would be the richest person, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, all of them added up together, and they still wouldn't, reach his material wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And him looking back after all that he had and just saying, it's pretty much vapor. It would be hard for the 21-year-old self to hear it, but just the wisdom to say that the accolades of building a successful business or some material gains have a very, very short shelf life, and the things that will bring you much more fullness are family and people and faith. And so don't get caught up in trying to hit certain numbers, because that number will always move. Once you hit that number, you'll want even more. So that's what I would try to borrow some of that wisdom from him.
And what is a brand or who's an entrepreneur that you're keeping an eye on, you're following, you like what they do? Who would that be?
There's a couple of them right now. I think that in the beverage space, there's a brand called Olipop that's doing like a reinventing soda with kind of some gut health and less sugar, and they've got a very passionate team and a fun brand around it, and they're doing a really great job. And I think they'll be an interesting one to watch in the beverage space. I think on the food side, there's anyone who's continuing to move inside of, like Siete's done an incredible job on the grain-free Hispanic market, from chips to, queso to Mexican wedding cake cookies. They've done an amazing job of taking some of those classics and bringing them forward, and they're passionate. Their family has worked really hard and done a great job. And those would be a couple in the food and beverage space that, Oatly has done an amazing job. That's kind of Captain Obvious now, but I've bought their products for a lot of years.
Right.
I think oat milk is still undervalued at how big of a category it's going to be, just because it has one of the best mouthfeels and experiences for an alt dairy product, and oats are a much easier product to grow than almonds long term. Mm-hmm. So I'm fascinated by that whole alt milk channel. And then anyone who's just cutting out sugar across food in different spaces. I think personally, I watch it like a hawk, and so I've seen tremendous benefit from it. I know it's probably longer than you'd want to hear, but those are a couple off the.
Those are awesome. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. So let's wrap this up. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way to contact you and keep up with what you're doing?
I would definitely connect on LinkedIn. That's, from an entrepreneur standpoint, that's an easy place to connect, and obviously can message there and, have a conversation. Our brand, is simple on Instagram and socials is at Project 7. And so that, if you want to sign up for a newsletter on our site, products, that sort of thing. So those would be the best ones to connect from here for sure.
All right. And any parting words of advice for entrepreneurs out there that are grinding it out in the physical product world right now?
I would just tell them that, you're just coming out of COVID, and it seems, it's been a tough time, and it feels like there's never been more brands than there has been, today. Mm-hmm. But man, there's never been a more awesome opportunity to not just have your shop constricted to your main street in your town and your zip code. You have the World Wide Web at your fingertips. Find your tribe, find your niche of product, and launch online there. Don't get hung up on getting listed at a retailer. if you have a killer story online and have great velocities, you'll have your opportunities to do stuff in brick and mortar. And so just that's an exciting thing. The barrier to entry, it used to be you had to get into a 7-Eleven if you wanted to get exposure by customers. You had to get into Whole Foods. You don't now. There's you can just bypass the whole thing. So it's an exciting time to be able to launch a physical product and do it online. And just, there may be some fatigue on the amount of ads people get, but think of other creative ways to disrupt and get people's attention. But just be encouraged that this is such an awesome time to launch a physical product.
That's awesome. All right, we'll end on that note. Hey, thank you, Tyler. Appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. This was great.
All right, buddy. Take care.
All right, we'll see you. The Physical Product Movement Podcast is brought to you by Fiddle. To find out more about Fiddle and how our industry-leading inventory ops platform is giving modern brands and manufacturers full visibility into their inventory and operations, visit fiddle.io. And then make sure to search for Physical Product Movement in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Fiddle, thanks for listening.